Joining us now, House Democratic Whip Congresswoman Katherine Clark of Massachusetts.
Whip Clark, thank you so much for joining us on what I'm sure is a very busy and packed evening. Can we start where Alicia ended? There are going to be some gaps. You know, the government doesn't just come back on like a light switch. You don't just flip a light switch and everything works. One of the gaps here that I'm wondering if Democrats have a way to take care of is contract workers. If you are a contract government worker, you do not get back pay. As we speak, the government is still shut down. That means folks have missed more than a month of paychecks, especially if they're a contract worker. Do Democrats have a provision or a bill that they are talking about bringing to the floor, speaking to your Republican colleagues about, to do something on behalf of the contract workers who work for the federal government?
Oh, well, thank you, Simone. Good to be on with you. And yes, it's a busy day. At long last, 54 days of silence, and now we are in it. And listen, our goal is to get government open and to get every single federal worker paid. And that means contract workers as well. That is going to take some negotiation with this administration who likes to put their finger on the scale. If they like you, they like the work you're doing, they want to pay you. If they don't, they're not so interested. So we're going to continue to work through the appropriations process with our colleagues across the aisle to do everything we can to make sure that every federal worker gets paid. And what has astounded me, there are many things that have astounded me about how the Republicans have approached this particular shutdown that they imposed on the American people. And one of them was their newfound respect for federal workers when they said nothing about the 200,000 workers that were fired prior to the shutdown, and the way this administration tried to use it to inflict, as they said, maximum trauma on federal workers. So we're going to do everything we can to hold our Republicans to their public statements that they want federal workers to be paid in full, and get back to work. And we're going to make sure that every job that was taken is restored. The ones that, you know, the OMB director tried to take away 4,500 jobs during the shutdown, and make sure that furloughed workers and contract workers are paid for the work that they have done in public service to our country.
Whip Clark, yesterday there was a lot of consternation in your caucus, a little bit of anger about having to take this deal that was coming over from the Senate, but it seems a lot of that is dissipated because of the bombshell that is the Jeffrey Epstein news and those new emails released by the House Oversight Committee. I'm curious, seeing how much this issue is directly tied to Donald Trump, do you think that perhaps next year that one of the messages coming from the House, especially the leadership, would be that if we are to retake power, and we have a Speaker Jeffries, we have a Whip Clark, that there should be a select committee pertaining to the Epstein files, because there are so many questions left unanswered. And this is something that Democrats can say on day one of our election, we will move to do this in a meaningful way?
Yeah, well, let's see how this plays out. I am so relieved that finally Speaker Johnson, who's months late to the game, he could have called a vote to release the Epstein files anytime he chose to. But he has now said that we will do it, because we forced him to with a discharge petition next week. And one of the reasons why we are fighting so hard for the American people is that they deserve a government that not only provides them health care and helps lower their costs, but works for them. And what we are seeing is outright corruption. We are seeing a president who is doing everything, including today, calling Republican members of Congress who signed on to the discharge petition, trying to get them to either vote no or get their names off before Adelita Grijalva could sign and lock those signatures in. And, you know, it just all begs the question of, when you make a campaign promise, what is in those files that is so dangerous to this president that he is going to these lengths to try and cover it up? So we are going to use, when we win the majority next year, those gavels, our chairmanship, our majority, on Oversight Committee, on Judiciary Committee, to get accountability and to be a check on the corruption that we are seeing in broad daylight. And so we will do whatever it takes to get justice for the survivors and victims of Jeffrey Epstein and to get to the bottom of what are in those files.
The big sticking point of this shutdown, Whip Clark, was the fact that ACA premiums are currently skyrocketing. That was the line that Democrats were trying to hold. You are now pursuing what is sort of an interesting maneuver, which is one of these discharge petitions, sort of making an end run around the speaker over ACA premiums. I have two questions for you. Just explain to us how that would work. And then also, have you spoken with any Republicans who would want to sign on to the ACA discharge?
So this is how it would work. It's it's the exact same procedural tool that we just used to force a vote on the Epstein files. And what we are saying is Democrats made the most common sense, most modest proposal to Republicans. That was, let's extend this for 1 year and form a bipartisan commission to look at it and to make sure that we are creating efficiencies, that the ACA signups work well for people, and that people are able to afford it, and that it's a healthcare system that works for people when and where they need it. That was rejected by Republicans. We went to the Rules Committee last night. Republicans rejected a 1-year extension, a 3-year extension. They even refused to take out what they themselves agreed was a very corrupt addition that the Senate Republicans put in that would personally benefit 8 Senate Republicans to the tune of $1 million. So we are saying to them, we've heard a lot of chatter from many of the House GOP that they would extend the tax credits for the ACA, that they realize that their constituents are being devastated by cutting this off with no plan and no support for people who depend on this health insurance. So our question to them is, if you wouldn't accept an amendment to do it, sign our discharge petition. Talk is cheap. Come and put your name on the side of helping American people who are just at so much anxiety that I'm hearing from my constituents and people around the country because they just can't afford an increase in their monthly costs of $1,000 or more a month just to have health insurance. And that is something that is so fearful when you feel like you may not be able to protect your family, that your child may not be able to afford an inhaler they need, that your spouse may not be able to continue cancer treatments, that you may have a difficult time managing diabetes or a pre-existing condition. These are very real issues that are facing Americans right now as the marketplace is in open enrollment. And we are saying to our Republicans, it's not too late. You can still do something this year. Come meet with us. Have a bipartisan agreement on ways that we can get relief to the American people when 60% of Americans are not able to afford the basics for their families. We are in an affordability crisis, and this is one of the ways that Republicans can help now if they're sincere about that.
I do think it's worth noting that discharge petitions are incredibly rare because it's hard to get them to succeed. I mean, what was the number? Since 1935, only about 24 or so discharge petitions have succeeded. So the fact that you all have succeeded on the Epstein discharge petition, at least getting it to the floor, and now talking about this for the ACA subsidies, I think it is worth doing. Very quickly, the Republicans have some other ideas. They've talked about other reforms to Obamacare, repealing it, replacing it altogether. The President of the United States has said, actually, maybe we could just give people money directly, like forget these insurance companies, just put it in a fund and give people the cash. Any of those proposals on the table for House Democrats?
You know, we're hearing a lot of talk a lot of talk about a lot of half-baked ideas, to be frank about it. But let's look at their record. Their record, they have voted to repeal the ACA 70 times. We have been waiting since 2017 for them to come up with a plan. You know, the repeal and replace. The replace never came, and they are still working at it. But the plan that they did come up with, the one they implemented, goes just like this. You take $1 trillion out of Medicaid, you take away the tax credits for the ACA, you take $500 billion out of Medicare, you devastate medical research and the future of cures in this country. You take that money and you give it in the form of permanent tax cuts for the very wealthiest. That's what their plan is. That's what they voted on. And that is what they are carrying through with their yes votes tonight.